I'm Anthony Hatcher. I'm an associate professor of communications. My passion for journalism was generated, like so many in my generation, from coverage of Watergate in the 1970s by Woodward and Bernstein and the Washington Post. It was a time when journalists were heroes. Also, and this one's going to sound a little silly, but I read Superman comics growing up, and Superman was a reporter. I don't think it's even realistic to think about going back to the days when I first started in journalism and you had 3 television networks in America and newspapers and radio, and that was it. And I think what bothers me is that people really don't understand in 2016 what journalism is. They think that a tweet is journalism. They think that anything that anybody writes and puts out on a device, not everybody of course thinks this, but too many do. So we need to go back to the standards of professionalism, and this is why I work in a school of communications and teach journalism. I have typewriters around my office, and I used to type on typewriters. I would say that the pace of journalism has changed a lot. Some for the good, some for the worse. I always stress to my students that it's better to be right than to be first. Technology is one change, but also I think attitudes toward speed versus accuracy have shifted a little bit. We need to increase media literacy so people don't believe every conspiracy theory and outright lies and exaggerations that come across the web. So here's my hope for the future of journalism, that people will begin to crave the truth again.
My name is Christina Elias. I realized I wanted to go into journalism when I was a freshman in high school. My mom forced me to take a journalism class as my elective instead of what I wanted to do, which was art. And I ended up having a really amazing professor who taught me all of these things that I'd never known before. Like, I didn't know anything about the world of journalism. Journalism to me is so important to the public, especially in the US. I think it's kind of the cornerstone of being an informed electorate and being an informed society. I know we talked about in one of my classes this semester how journalists have always thought of journalism as a public service, and that's not really the case. It is a business at its core, but I do think that it's a business that does a public service, and to me that's really important and really vital to a democracy. Social media has had a positive and negative impact on journalism because it's allowed us to disseminate news and to a wider audience, but with that ability comes less regulation of what news is going out to the general public. And so like right now there's a big conversation about fake news in social media, and I definitely think that's something that people are going to have to try to learn about and deal with, because that's one of the things that comes with social media.
Michael Scooby. I am an associate professor of communications, teaching primarily journalism courses. Journalism is also serves a watchdog function. It tries to speak truth to power. That is, it is the essential element in a democracy that provides a check on the government. I would read the sports page every morning. On all fours, I've been reading the box scores, and that's the only thing I ever wanted to do. When I was in high school, my mother bought me a used typewriter, a Smith Corona, for $20, and I would practice writing my own sports stories while covering a game on television, and I would compare it with what I saw in the Illinois State Journal-Register the next morning, and I thought that mine didn't fare too badly compared to the real journalism. For most of the 19th century, when there were numerous newspapers in every town, journalism was much less impartial. It was overtly partial. It was very advocacy. What we think of as balanced, responsible, impartial journalism came about in the early to mid 19th century, partly as a result of many newspapers dying off. New York City in, I think, 1910 or 1920 had 13 newspapers. Not all of them were good, that's not the point, but when there became only one news source or two, it became more important to be straight with your readers. I believe in a separation between news and opinion or commentary. I've done both, and I know that they serve different functions. The reader, the viewer, wants to know what happened, who said what does this mean? And I think it's your job to try to analyze that, to tell that story as impartially as you can.